Okay, welcome everybody out tonight. And last week we talked a little bit about foraging, and I think we'll talk about that a little more in the future. The reason I kind of think it's important is it's something everybody can do, regardless if they have you know an eighth of an acre lot, or if they have a zero lot, or if they don't have any land at all. Just go foraging in public access land, your local park or your wildlife area or whatever. Uh, might might be a need to in a life-changing event, you might need to do that to supplement your food. So we'll probably go into more of that because we can talk about you know medicinal foraging and as well as food foraging.
Great. I've been taking little snaps of greenbrier since I learned last week, and they're nice little crunchy things. So,
Yeah.
and while I didn't forage it, Maggie flushed a wild turkey and found a clutch of eggs, but we quickly left them alone. So I suppose that qualifies as foraging.
Yeah, could have been if it needed to be.
Yeah, exactly.
Today, you were probably busy and didn't see it, but the markets just had a horrendous day today, especially at the end of the day. It really got ugly, and I think a lot of that was due to Chairman Powell was supposed to address the nation tomorrow. I think at 2 p.m. And then we had a lot of earnings today that were out, and most of them didn't. The market didn't seem to react well to them. So it was kind of one of those days where it was all one market. Pretty much everything was down. Gold was down $50 right before the end of the market, but then after the market closed, it was actually up $5. So it was moving around like a lot of other things. And after the stock market closed, it was 22.92, which I think was up $5. Like I said, it was all over the place. Goldbacks are down a nickel from last week this time, so they're down to 455. So I think it's a good opportunity to, as well as gold mining shares and goldbacks, good opportunities there, I think. Silver was up about a nickel, I think, at the end of the day, although it's down most of the day. And I think that's about $1.2633. I think it's about $1 cheaper than it was last week. So there again. And gold silver ratio is even climbed. It's at 87 to 1 now. So that kind of says that silver's kind of a screaming buy at this point, in my opinion. And even the long bonds were down today. Tilton zeros were down, I think, about $1.75 today. So it wasn't any safety in bonds, which kind of surprised me. I figured people would be interested in getting their money back as opposed to getting return on their money. Wheat was down 3 cents today, $5.69. Pretty well held its own. The DBA commodities, agricultural commodities, was down a little bit. And I think that was due to cocoa is finally, I think, hit its high. It's just been on a tear for a couple of years and seems to be rolling over. So that's a pretty significant portion of the DBA commodity fund. And then DBC was down a few cents also, which is a more broadly based commodity with gold and some other precious and not so precious metals and oil and gas and some agricultural commodities too, but got a little bit of everything. But both of those should perform well in inflationary times. And all the military industrial complex stocks were down today with the market. I tried to get a long position in XAR, but I didn't get filled with it late in the day.
Who is XAR?
That's an ETF that owns the 17 largest, including these guys.
Mm-hmm.
So it's just a way to sort of cover the whole industrial military complex in one trade. So every time it goes down, I try to take a long position in it. So that's one of the few stocks that I feel or ETFs that I feel comfortable buying the dip on. I think we're kind of guaranteed there's going to be wars and rumors of wars. And UNG is natural gas. That was down a full $1 from where it was last week. This time it was 15.44 last week, even though the futures were up about 12 cents for the 1,000 cubic foot of natural gas. So that was kind of strange. And it's below its cost of production at about 230. So yeah, that will right itself eventually. This oil was down a little bit, down to $78. It was $80 last week. There's kind of a war going on right there between whether the economy is going to be poor enough that demand will go down or versus, stirring up things in the Middle East that would cut supply. So that's trying to balance itself out. I'm not sure which way it's going to go, but and Bitcoin was very volatile today. It was as low as 59,000 and as high as it opened around 63,000 this morning, but pretty much went down all day, and then at the end, after the stock market closed, it went up a bit to about 60,000. So and bits and BitI were kind of weird. They should have both been four bits should have been negative 4%, and BitI should have been positive 4%, but that wasn't the way it was trading. It was and of course, we've been following Jamie Dimon warns that interest rates could rise to 8%. And so my question, if that really happened, what would the Dow Jones Industrial do? It was down 570 points today on a possible rumor that Jay Powell tomorrow is going to say something negative. So if he really said something negative, I would expect it would be down, 3,000 points or something crazy. But tomorrow should be an interesting day also in the markets. So other things we go through is war on natural gas, war on the middle class, war on cash, still going on, war on food. And I think we can add the USA to that list of countries. War on gardens, war on meat. Have you got your chipped beef yet?
No, maybe.
You know anything about that?
No. Tell me more.
I've got a video if you want to go through it right quick. But what let's go ahead and do that just for fun.
for cows and bison. Now, while seemingly random and easy to ignore, Congressman Thomas Massie of Kentucky, he doesn't see it that way. Instead, after learning about this provision, he issued a warning about how these ear tags might eventually be used to electronically track livestock across the entire country in an effort to limit the consumption of beef. Here's specifically how he laid out the threat in a Twitter post. Quote, "Hidden in this week's omnibus, lobbyists got $15 million to implement electronic tracking of all cattle in the U.S. No law authorizes this. It will be used by the Green Agenda to limit beef production and by the corporate meat oligopoly to dominate small ranchers." Now, there is obviously a lot to unpack here. The specific provision that he's referring to within the spending bill is this one right here. It's a short paragraph that's incredibly easy to miss, especially given the fact that the actual spending bill is about this thick. But here's what the relevant paragraph says. Quote, "The agreement directs the Department of Agriculture to continue to provide the tag and related infrastructure needed to comply with the Federal Animal Disease Traceability Rule, including no less than $15 million for electronic identification (EID) tags and related infrastructure needed for stakeholders to comply with the proposed rule, use of electronic identification ear tags as official identification in cattle and bison should that rule be finalized." Now let's unpack what this actually means in plain English in order to give you a real sense of what's going on here. To start with, back in the year 2013, the USDA passed a rule called the Federal Animal Disease Traceability Rule. And just for your general reference, even though it's technically called an administrative rule, it actually does have the force of law. Because as it currently stands, rules that are created like this by federal agencies, such as by the USDA, in practical terms, they have the same power as laws. You can call them...
Okay, that's a nasty little thing that is getting in our whole system nowadays. But
Yeah. Well, that's what you mean by chipped beef.
yeah. So anyway, something is coming up, and I was really surprised that they didn't include sheep in that, but they did include goats. I don't know. I guess they think it. I guess the number of sheep is so low in this country now that they didn't bother. So, but that's something that could seriously affect, if you're not towing the line and getting the proper vaccines and everything, you might not be able to, even if you could find a slaughterhouse, you may not be able to run it through a slaughterhouse because you don't qualify for some reason. So the seasonal information, still talking about planting some trees maybe, or pruning trees and vines, plant that garden. We're all behind them. Plant seeds indoors, sweet potato slips, got that covered, I think. Check bees. It was kind of interesting. I did a check of bees over at the Hughes' house today, and one hive was really doing good, and the other one was kind of a mess. But and then this last week over at the other Johnsons, they had 3 swarms out of 1 hive. I was able to catch those for them. And, so they got a good increase out of that anyway. So now, any progress anybody would like to share at this point?
Well, our garden is much closer to getting ready. We had the youth come over for one of their service projects 2 weeks in a row. So we've got it mulched and prepped, and we've got some herbs planted in some planters. So we have made some progress.
Cool.
And I got the garden gate up. I just got to finish the fence.
We were the opposite. We had the fence, but no gate.
We got the picnic tables put together.
Yeah, we got 2 new picnic tables, one for the garden and one for the over here by the house. I want to talk about the strawberries.
Have we had the last of the lambs yet?
I got one more.
But she's still not dropped.
No, and I put them all together in that other green paddock there below them. Here
In the barn field area.
Yeah, figure I can keep up with that one.
I had to go to Richmond to the storehouse, and so they have the Provident Living things that you can buy, and they had 2 pallets of freeze-dried strawberries, and I've got 2 cases of it for us. But apparently, the online is already out of them. But they were available on Saturday in Richmond.
So I think this pullback in gold is a good time to buy some gold backs if you don't have any. Those. There's a picture of one of the frames I took out of the hive that I was inspecting today. It was a real mess in there. They didn't pull it out right, whether you can see over here, but there's a space between the foundation and this wax bridge they created here. So I had to scrape all that off and take it back down to bare foundation and put it back in, and hopefully they'll do it right next time. We'll see. I had about four or 5 frames in there that were kind of that way. So the other thing, I got a couple of videos that I wanted to play. One is, are we going the way of Argentina? Don't hear much about Argentina since Milei was elected, and he was going to do all these wonderful things, and I figured he wouldn't have a chance to do them, but he's actually doing a lot of them apparently, and their president must have a lot more constitutional power than our presidents do. So we will see how that comes out.
And eventually, the United States of America is going to have to pay the piper one way or another. There's no way that we can continue to increase the amount of debt that we have and not have to pay for the consequences down the road. Today on this video, I would like to go over real quick what Argentina's been through after President Milei took over and what we can expect to happen to us here when the dollar is finally replaced or it goes to zero, just like every fiat currency in the history of mankind has gone. Now, ladies and gentlemen, understand that whatever Argentina is going through, we here in the United States, in my opinion that is, are going to have to go through something that's probably going to be tenfold as bad as what they're going to. Not only do we have a lot more debt, but we do have a lot more people. And we also have to remember about all of the unfunded liabilities that we have, in excess of $200 trillion of unfunded liabilities. AP, what's an unfunded liability? It is a promise made to we the people by the United States government. But the problem is that the government has to take from we the people in order to give back to we the people. It's just a transfer of wealth from one to the other. Success and setbacks. 100 days of Argentina's Milei. Once in office, he cut the cabinet in half to 9 ministries and slashed 50,000 public jobs. Understand, ladies and gentlemen, like I said, it's going to be a lot worse here in the United States. In the United States, the last time I remember, directly and indirectly, there are over 30 million jobs for the federal government. What's going to happen when a lot of those redundant jobs that the federal government hires on go away? What's going to happen when the federal government starts to use AI in order to do a lot of the jobs that can be done by AI now, because they realize that it's one way that they can impose austerity upon the public and not really diminish the quality of the work that's going out. And you can just see, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all of the things that they're going to have to cut. He suspended all new public works contracts and ripped away generous fuel and transport subsidies. Milei has come under fire for shutting down the state news agency and anti-discrimination agency and removing funding from scientific research and the cinema industry. Pretty much, he's removing funding from things that are not critical to the government to be able to function for those things that it's supposed to be doing for the people. So funding for the fish that are on cocaine and how they made and all that kind of stuff that you always hear Senator Rand Paul every year cry out as how the government is wasting money, all of that funding is going to go away. And the thing is, ladies and gentlemen, is that in my opinion, when that funding goes away, it's not because we're going to have someone in there that says, yes, let's go ahead and cut this, cut this, cut this, cut that. It's because we're going to be forced to do it because our dollar is going to be so devalued. That is why they want us to go into a CBDC so bad, because they know what's coming. So if you know this ahead of time, you should be getting prepared for the day when your dollar buys you maybe, if you're lucky, 1/10 of what it used to buy you. We are going to go back to a simpler place and time when the dollar finally goes away, because people are not going to be able to be on the back of the government the way that they are now. What you have to understand is that all of this borrowing that the government does, it is on the backs of your children's future, ladies and gentlemen. That's exactly what it is. The government is taking resources from the future, spending it now, and then what are the children going to have in the future except for all of this debt? I hope that makes sense. Milei took office warning things will get much worse for Argentines before they get better. And they have gotten much worse. But I see that in the future, if they continue down this road, that they would get better. He started out by devaluing the peso by 54% and removing price controls. Price controls never work. And being that Mr. Milei, or President Milei, is an economist by profession, he understood that as well. And that's probably one of the very first things that he did. Now, he had to devalue the dollar. Why? Because of the debt, ladies and gentlemen. He had no choice. It's going to get worse here as well before it gets better. And you can already see it getting worse. It's just compared to Argentina, the U.S. is getting worse in slower motion than Argentina did, because we haven't taken the bull by the horns like President Milei did. These measures, along with the removal of fuel and transport subsidies, have seen Argentines' purchasing power plummet, causing a slowdown in consumption and economic growth. And it looks like this picture shows people that are protesting, more than likely people that were used to the subsidies that the government was putting out on the backs of other people. Now, let me not forget to remind you that this afternoon at 3 p.m. Alaska time, 7 p.m. Eastern time, we will be having our live stream here on this channel.
Anyway, I think get the gist of what he's saying. I have not heard anything on American news about this since the election. I don't know about y'all. Anybody heard anything about it?
No.
No.
Apparently, he's just going like gangbusters. And like I said, I don't think an American president would have that kind of power, but to do those things. But anyway,
Yeah, if he can inflate their currency, he can pay off that debt pretty quick.
yeah. And I just can't imagine that our politicians are going to do anything but keep on inflating things, until they're forced to do something. They'll just keep on kicking it down the road as long as they can, which means we're in for pretty serious inflation, I think.
I will say that he looks like a character in a play, like Javert or something. And
Yeah, he's a pretty odd duck.
Yeah.
What I've seen of him.
He looks like looks like a person out of time.
Yeah. So anyway, Argentina's done this inflation and destroy the currency many times before.
Yeah,
So
they have.
hopefully this will come out with a better, if they'll keep at it, hopefully they'll come out with better results. But time will tell. Okay. Let's go ahead. Well, I've got my screen shared here and play this other one since it's May, which is the prime planting month for gardens in our area. So give us some ideas, maybe.
There with you. 10 crops you should be planting in May. Let's go! Around here in Jersey, Zone 7A, May is when we truly transition into the growing season. The frosts have passed. The soil has warmed. It's the perfect time to get some crops planted. The first crop we're going to plant in May are melons. Cutting open some fresh cantaloupes and getting a taste of them, or some fresh homegrown watermelons, is a true sign of summer. So refreshing, so sweet, and so rewarding. Melons are a summer veggie and they hate the cold. The vines may not set fruit if the seedlings get chilled when they're young. You want the soil temperature to be at least 70 degrees Fahrenheit or warmer before planting. You also want to pick a spot that gets about as much sun as you can find with good air circulation, because you want the vines to dry out quickly when they get wet to prevent disease. Let me show you how I plant my melons from seed. First, I'm going to take some all-purpose fertilizer, just put it on the ground like that, and then mix it in. This way the melon has some nutrition when it first sprouts. Then we're going to take our seeds, just grab a few seeds here, and we're going to make a hole with our finger about 1/2 inch deep, and I'm going to drop 2 melon seeds in here. Then we'll just cover it up and water it in. I like to plant my melon seeds at the edge of my raised bed. This way they can grow out the side and kind of trellis along the ground, and they don't take up too much space in my raised bed. Or I will grow them up a trellis and tie something like a piece of cloth or cut up insect netting underneath it to help support the fruit. To get a head start, you can plant seeds indoors about 2 to 4 weeks before transplanting out. Always be sure to harden your seedlings off before planting out. Be patient. It's better to transplant too late rather than too early. A few cold nights will set your melons back and could prevent fruiting. Cucumbers are the next crop to get planted in May. They're similar to melons and are in the same plant family. I can never have too many cucumbers to harvest. They're one of my favorite summer veggies to eat. Cooling, delicious, they produce prolifically, and they fruit quickly. A couple weeks after your last expected frost, you can direct sow cucumbers. Like melons, they love the heat and hate the cold. The biggest mistake when planting cucumbers and melons is planting out too early. I suggest waiting 3 to 4 weeks after your last frost date to transplant out. It's better to wait for the soil to heat up because, like melons, cucumbers don't like getting cold feet. A week or two late is always better than too early. I suggest growing cucumbers up a trellis. This makes them easier to harvest and avoids a lot of the disease issues that can occur when cucumbers are sprawling. Cucumbers and melons both can be attacked by the cucumber beetle. To prevent this, I use an insect netting when the plants are young and highly susceptible. Then I take that netting off when the plants flower so the bees can pollinate them. I also spray my plants with surround kaolin clay, which acts as a protectant and discourages the beetles from going after my cucumbers because it gums up their antennas. May is a great time to get squash planted, both summer squash and winter squash. Tuck's around here somewhere. Hey boyo, want a snack? I think this guy wants a snack, the king. What do you think, Tuck? Oh, want a mustard green, boy? I know this guy's looking for a snack somewhere. He's always ready for something. He loves the mustard greens. He likes chewing on the stems because they're full of water. What do you think, boy? Pretty good? Spam some hearts down below if you love seeing Tuck, the young king, in the videos. He loves being out here. He's always working hard. So sometimes he needs to take just a little bit of a quick break to grab a snack so he can go back and protect the garden a little bit more. Me and Tuck want to mention that this weekend only, we're having a sale on the 32-inch tall metal raised beds. So if you want to grab a raised bed that's easily accessible and will save your back, check one out right now at teamgrow.us. Zucchini is one of my favorite summer squash to grow. But don't underestimate some of the other great varieties, like the Englisher custard squash. Interesting shape, beautiful color, and great flavor. Also try out the most productive squash I have ever grown, the white scallop squash, an old Native American variety that tastes great and kicks out so much food it's hard to keep up. Winter squash are great as well, like the butternut squash, which is practically immune to vine borers. If you start your squash seeds inside, make sure you use large cells because the plants can easily get root bound and they do not like that. Also, when transplanting out, make sure the soil is warm and any danger of frost is far past. They are summer veggies. They hate the cold and thrive in the heat. I will direct sow squash in the garden now and plant another round of squash in late June or early July to make sure I always have young, healthy, thriving plants growing. Also, you won't have to deal with vine borers because you will be outside of the window of time when the adults are laying eggs. One thing to note is that squash are heavy feeders, so you want to mix in some all-purpose fertilizer when direct sowing or when transplanting out. For early plantings, you can cover your seedlings with insect netting or even use surround kaolin clay to spray on your young plants. This will make them less attractive to squash bugs, cucumber beetles, and vine borers. Now that the last spring frost has passed, and me and Tuck are so happy about it, it's the perfect time to get some green beans planted. Most green beans I like planting aren't even green. A few of my favorite varieties are the dragon tongue bean, which you need to try if you never have. They look incredible and taste delicious. I also have some purple bean varieties, which also look stunning and taste great. Green beans hate the cold. That's why May is a great time to plant them. I consider green beans to be one of the easiest crops to plant. Maybe not to grow, but definitely to plant. They do not like being transplanted though. So when it comes to green beans, direct sowing is your best option. Beans are nitrogen fixers and don't need any additional fertilizer, especially any additional nitrogen. Too much nitrogen will cause the beans to focus mainly on leaf growth instead of the production of beans. When growing bush beans, I like to plant them in the square foot method and plant 9 seeds per square foot. Then I water them in, and in about a week, the seeds will sprout. Make sure if you're planting pole beans that you have a trellis for them to grow up. If you don't have a trellis, then they'll sprawl out and strangle some of the plants around them. Especially some varieties like the scarlet runner bean, they grow prolifically, and if you let them sprawl, they will negatively affect a lot of the plants around them. May is when me and the young King Tuck plant out our sweet potatoes. Sweet potato vines look beautiful and the tubers are packed with vitamins and minerals. They also grow great in containers, so even though they're a vine, you don't need a lot of space for them. The patio is even enough space. Like most crops we're planting this month, sweet potatoes are warm weather crops and hate the cold, so be patient when planting yours out. We grow sweet potatoes from slips. You can either start your own from a sweet potato that you have, or you can order some great varieties online from a reputable company like Fedco. Because we're growing sweet potatoes for the tubers, we want to make sure we're growing them in a soil that's light and loose and drains well and is packed with organic matter. This will give us the highest level of production. We also want to make sure that we're using a fertilizer that isn't super high in nitrogen. If the fertilizer is too high in nitrogen, that will cause the plants to focus on the production of leaves instead of on the production of roots and tubers, which is what we want. I like using this turbo tuber fertilizer. It's really great and I get it from Fedco. In May, we still have plenty of time to plant out regular potatoes as well. In a previous video, I showed you my lazy way for growing tons of potatoes and still getting massive harvests. If you're interested in that, go check it out after this video. Regular potatoes are a bit more cold hardy than sweet potatoes, but they don't like a frost either. So late April or in May is a great time to get your potatoes planted. New growth will shoot up from the eyes of the potatoes. When planting, we want to cover them with about 4 to 5 inches of soil. Like sweet potatoes, we want our regular potatoes to focus on the production of tubers and not on the production of leaves. So using a fertilizer that's not high in nitrogen is smart. I use the turbo tuber fertilizer for my regular potatoes just like I do for my sweet potatoes, and I get great production. It's also important to come out and add soil around the growing potatoes. This is called hilling and will give you bigger harvests and will also prevent the potatoes from turning green and developing a toxic substance in them called solanine. In May, we still have plenty of time to get some flowers planted. Some gardeners don't see flowers as a crop, but I think that they're so additive. They're so fantastic and they help production so much that I see them as kind of like part of the overall harvest of my fruits and veggies. Some of my favorite flowers to grow, well, one of them is right below me here, is borage. This is such a fantastic companion. It helps a lot of other plants around it grow better, and they say it even helps improve the flavor of tomatoes. I also love other ones like sunflowers. Last year I grew some massive sunflowers that were over 10 feet tall. Calendula is another great companion, has a beautiful flower, and it's a very useful flower as well. And zinnia is probably one of my favorite looking flowers. Varieties like the candy cane zinnia and the mazurkia are so beautiful, it's striking. We can't forget about perennial flowers either. Echinacea is one of my favorites, such a useful plant, and it comes back every year. The flowers are beautiful. The birds absolutely love it, and it's a fantastic perennial. If you don't have echinacea growing, you need to get some planted now. Nasturtiums are another flower me and Tuck love growing. They're really cool because you could eat the flowers, you could eat the leaves, they have like a little peppery flavor. They're nice to add to salads. Also, chamomile is a fantastic flower. It's a useful herb that we could just make tea out of, and the flowers look so beautiful. In mid-May is when I transplant out my tomatoes and my peppers. If you want, in very early May, you can even still plant tomatoes from seed, and they'll catch up to some of the ones you started inside. In the past, I started some tomatoes in like February, and I started them so early it ended up being so much extra work. Then I went out and I planted some tomatoes like much later in late April, and the ones from late April caught up to the ones that I planted in February. So when it comes down to it, sometimes being a little bit lazy or a little bit patient ends up making things much easier, and it creates just an overall enjoyable experience. Even though it's May and we already have some beautiful lettuce growing, we should still go out and plant more rounds of lettuce to have more staggered plantings. Or you can start some lettuce seed inside and then transplant it out. The idea is that when we take one lettuce plant out, we always have another one on deck, and we want to have lettuce at different stages of growth. This way we have harvests that are continual and we're not just overloaded with so much lettuce at once. The same goes with carrots. You can see we have some carrots popping up right here. This is my first round of carrots, and then I'll plant another round of carrots in early May, and then another round after that in the second week of May. This 2-week stagger planting makes it so we always have more rounds of carrots coming up and growing. This way, when me and Tuck go out and harvest 1 square foot of carrot, there's always another square foot to replace it. If you're having some issues planting carrots, especially when it starts to get hot out, try the carrot board trick. It's something I've showed in previous videos, but it works fantastic, especially when your soil starts to dry out very quick in the heat of late spring and summer. The next crop you need to stagger plant in May are radishes. You can see a beautiful set of radishes coming up here, 16 per square foot. They grow so quick and they taste really good. I'll tell you what, homegrown radishes are underrated. You may have had radishes from the store and they kind of stain your love for radishes, but the ones that are homegrown taste nothing like the ones from the store. These ones, not only do they come in beautiful colors and different sizes, but they taste really nice. They have like a little bit of a sweet flavor, some of them, and then a nice little bit of sharpness as well. They're so fresh tasting, they're so juicy, and Tuck loves them, so you know they're good. That's today's video, growers. Thanks for watching. We hope you enjoyed it. We hope you got something out of it. Tuck is always finding the great shade places, right boy? He loves being out here. I'll tell you what, it's such a beautiful day today. The sun's out, there's a little breeze, the air is relatively crisp, it's not really hot out. There's nothing like being out here and getting some stuff planted in May. It's such a fun time of year because we even have a lot of our asparagus and stuff popping up. There are so many asparagus through the garden. This year we have a absolute bumper crop, so we want to encourage you guys to not only plant some stuff like we shared with you, these annuals in May, but make sure you're planting some perennials too, because they're the thing that pays you back year after year after year, and it's a blast to be a part of them. Me and Tuck had a lot of fun out here. We wanted to just thank everyone for their continued support, and don't forget to spam some hearts down low for the young king. He loves all your support.
Okay. Anyway, hopefully there was something there that you like, and there's lots of choices of things that can be planted. And I was kind of surprised that he was recommending planting potatoes in May, but I usually wait till aside from the early crop, I usually wait till like July and plan for a fall crop. But anyway, I guess potatoes will grow about any time as long as it doesn't get too hot and dry.
I don't suppose you could share the link to that video in the chat. I'd like to go back and review it.
Yeah. He's got a ton of videos out there. So okay, so just about everything at this point can be planted, unless you get another frost. He's about in the same zone we're in, pretty much, except, or at least that I'm in. You seem to be in 6B or something, but or 6A.
Yeah, I think my lows can get a little lower. Thank you.
Well, if nobody's got anything else, let's shut her down for the night. And thanks for coming out. And we'll see you next week.
Thank you
Night.
both. Night.
Right.